Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to my channel, Kalanati. Today I'm going to do a really quick look at my reading statistics and goals for the year so far. I do these check-ins quarterly, so what I'll be talking about today is only my numbers up through the end of March of 2020. I think it goes without saying that the worldwide events recently have been affecting my reading much like they've been affecting everybody else. The disruptions to my ability to concentrate and get things read started even earlier in my life though. I spent the first half of January thinking that 2020 was going to be the best reading year ever, and then my grandfather died, and I spent about 2 weeks in that kind of haze, not wanting to do anything and being busy with all the family stuff. And then once that was over and I thought, once again, I'm gonna get back into reading all the time, well then that's when, the COVID-19 pandemic started up. So you can already probably see in my first quarter statistics that just everything is down a little bit from where it was in the previous year. I shouldn't complain, I'm still reading a ton compared to, well, the average, I suppose, but from my perspective it feels like I'm not reading as much, and when I do I have to make myself, which is not always the best thing to do if you want to enjoy what you're gonna read. But anyway, here are my statistics. It's gonna go by pretty fast. There isn't much to say about them so far at this point in the year. And then at the end, I will check in on my 3 goals for the year. In the first 3 months of 2020, I read 49 things. 42 were books, 5 were novellas, and 2 were comics or manga. 20 of those things were by male authors, 26 were by female authors, and 3 were by both. So far, science fiction accounts for almost 35% of what I read, which is actually up a little bit. Fantasy is at 20.5%, no surprise. Nonfiction is 16%, and humor and poetry both account for about 8% each, which is a little bit surprising. I don't usually read that much that I would classify as actually humor, but I read some of the Jeeves and Wooster collections back in January when things were tough. Poetry is a little bit surprising. I thought that with all the comfort reading I'd be doing this year, I would see more romance here, but that's actually not even more than 5% yet of my reading. I've also read from some other genres like anthologies, horror, contemporary mystery, and romance, but none of those in any great bulk, let's say. Now, I'm also interested in the split between the paid and free sources for what I read. I do track where I get all of my reading material, and then I usually just break it down by which of those were paid for, like I owned, and which of those are free, like library sources. And despite how much I've tried to move the needle on this over the years with reading my own books and everything, I've always sat at 50-50. 50% paid, that means basically my owned books, and 50% free, which is mostly library stuff. And then, in the first quarter of 2020, 35% of what I've read has been paid for, and 65% has been free. I expect that it will eventually even out to that 50-50 split later in the year, but I suspect what happened here is that I focused so much on reading my own books, my physical TBR, at the end of 2019, that when everything started over at the beginning of 2020, I let myself off the hook and just got a bunch of stuff from the library. But it will be interesting to see what the rest of this year is like, given, of course, that libraries have been shut down for quite a while at this point when I'm filming. 16% of what I have read has been translated. I do think that's quite high, but it's also early in the year and that might go down considerably. I would love for like 15 to 20% of what I read this year to be translated. I'm just not sure how realistic that is. Only 8% of what I've read has been rereads, and once again, I think this is going to change. I am expecting to do some more rereads in the middle of the year, so it's kind of low right now, but it could change considerably with all that comfort rereading. So that's pretty much it for the statistics. There's not really anything of interest there so far. I mean, it's only 3 months worth of data, and the next check-in will have more cumulative stuff to look at. But now on to my 3 goals for the year. My first goal was to stay within a $600 book buying budget for the entire year, which means $50 per month for books. So far, as of April 14th, I have spent $228.17. I am a little bit ahead on my spending, but I'm not really concerned. I do tend to buy books mostly at the beginning and the end of the year, so I expect to be a little bit ahead on the numbers right now, and then I will taper off into the middle of the year. I am kind of contemplating whether I might change this goal or let myself off the hook for it a little bit. I don't want to make myself unhappy by not letting myself buy books when that is such a great comfort. So I'm thinking that it wouldn't be terrible if I exceeded the $600 budget that I set for myself. I don't really want that to happen, but if it does, it wouldn't be terrible. But I would like to make sure that any of my book buying purchases are still covered by my Patreon income, because that would mean that my major expense for this channel is still covered. And by the way, thank you very much to my Patreon supporters. These are tough times, actually, so I really do appreciate even more that people are supporting me over on Patreon. It is definitely giving me a little bit of peace of mind about keeping things running as they usually do around here. My second goal for the year is to get my physical TBR down to 20 books and to read 80% of what I buy in 2020 by the end of the year. I'm okay with this so far, but I haven't really tracked the numbers to be super specific about it. I believe that my physical TBR is at about 38 books. It's gone up by a couple of books, which once again is expected because I do most of my book buying at the beginning of the end of the year. Then you see that kind of peak and then it starts to go down later. So I'm not really concerned about this. I, at this point, need to take about 18 books off of my TBR to get it to my goal, which is not that many books, actually. I've only read 62% of what I've bought so far this year, though. I'm less happy with that because if I'm at 80% all the way through the year, that means I'm reading things almost as soon as I buy them, which is the actual point of this goal. I think I'll do better in the second quarter of the year, though. So really not on target with this one, but it is not critical either. And then my third and final goal for this year was to start 2 new reading projects, and I have half done this. I have launched my SF Masterworks reading project, and I've already read and reviewed a couple of books for that, so that is one checked off of this. I haven't launched my Otherwise Award Winners project yet, mostly because the timing has been terrible, and for that particular award, most of the books on my reading list I need to get through interlibrary loan, and the libraries are closed right now and I don't know when they're going to open again. So I think that I will probably start the second project in the middle of the year. The goal is simply to launch the project, not to read a certain number of books or whatever for it, just to get it started. So there isn't that much pressure on me for that, but I would like to start it and be all official about it. I have been having fun with the SF Masterworks project, actually. It has really reignited my interest in reading some of, well, these books that have been sitting back there for ages and I need to get to. So yeah, that is basically it for where I am at so far in the year. It will be very interesting to see what the second quarter statistics are like, probably more interesting than this particular one. But let me know how you are doing. Did you set any goals for yourself? Are you tracking your reading this year, or have you just thrown your hands up and said, whatever, it doesn't matter this year? Because I have actually contemplated doing that in recent days, but I like a little bit of structure in my life, even in my hobbies. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll be back soon with another video, and until then, bye.